So you want to own a coffee shop. At Scooters, the average customer spends $9.83, a drive-through window, a line of cars at 7 in the morning, an espresso machine, a milk jug, paper cups, a lit menu board. That's the picture. Here is the table: 555 kiosks filed with their franchisor for 2024. Sales, $919.85. Left over, $129,232. Same store, same year, same page. The table prints 9 expense lines and then stops right before the line where the loan payment goes. Every figure between those two ends sits in the same document. So does the reason it stops where it does. In February 2025, Arabica on the ICE exchange reached a price it had never reached before: $4.41 a pound. More than double what the same contract cost a year earlier. In April 2025, the median menu price for a regular cup of coffee across the United States was $3.50, up 4% on the year. A pound of green beans and a cup sold across a counter are not the same unit, and there is no honest way to turn one into the other without knowing how many grams go into a cup. Nobody publishes that. But you stand between the two numbers anyway. You buy near the first one. You sell at the second. One of them moved in multiples. The other moved in single digits. The distance between those two speeds has to land somewhere, on one specific line of a table that has 9 of them. Not every line takes it. The table doesn't skip anything. It runs from gross sales down through discounts, cost of goods, labor, rent, royalty, marketing, technology, card processing, and a line called Other Estimated Costs. Then it reaches $129,232, and it ends. The note underneath explains the ending. That figure is stated before any payment or cost of borrowing on the money that financed the Item 5 fees and the Item 7 investment. It's worth knowing whose numbers those are, too. At the end of 2024, there were 717 franchised kiosks in the system. 605 of them had been open the full 12 months. 50 of those were then dropped because they did not give the franchisor complete cost and expense data. What's left is 555 stores, the ones that opened their books. So 9 lines filed by the stores that filed them, and 1 more line below the last one that nobody filed at all. The store is yours. The terms are not. Royalty first. 6% of net sales paid to the franchisor for the life of the agreement, then the national marketing and advertising contribution, currently 2% of net sales, and the agreement allows it to be raised to 4%. Local marketing sits at 0 right now, with the right reserved to require up to 2% in future. Regional cooperatives, none currently, with recurring contributions of up to 3% permitted. Add up what the agreement allows rather than what it currently charges. 6 plus 4 plus 2 plus 3. The ceiling written into the contract is 15% of net sales. What the average store actually paid in 2024 was 8%. In dollars, those 2 live lines came out at $50,404 and $16,801. And check what net sales means in this agreement before you assume it means money you received. The document defines it as the sale of all products and services from the store for cash or on credit, regardless of whether the charge is ever collected, and including the fair market value of anything taken in barter or exchange. The royalty is owed on the sale, not on the payment. Then there's the question of what you're allowed to buy. Coffee beans, syrups and sauces, sandwiches, burritos, baked goods, smoothie mixes, cups, lids, napkins. All of it has to come from approved suppliers, and the document states that all of your initial purchases are anticipated to come from Scooter's Coffee Supply Chain, an entity that shares the franchisor's principal business address. You don't choose your supplier. That was settled before you signed. And one more line, the quietest one on the table. Card processing, the estimated cost of running debit, credit, and gift card payments, which the document puts at an average of 26% of gross sales, not of profit, of everything that comes through the window in a business built on a drive-through queue. It is charged on the top line, which means it is charged whether the store made money that year or not. Item 7 of the 2025 disclosure document lists what it takes to open one kiosk: $954,650 at the low end, $1,523,400 at the high end. 11 lines inside that range. The initial franchise fee, $40,000. An initial opening support fee, $20,000. Site and building improvements, $639,100 to $974,350. and that is without buying the land underneath it. Architectural and engineering fees, $26,150 to $72,100. You are responsible for preparing blueprints that suit the shape of your site, and that estimate includes a required site investigation report at roughly $5,000. Equipment, fixtures, and furniture, $132,200 to $195,200. Signs, $31,800 to $65,150. Point of sale system and software, $11,950 to $14,050. Deposits and licenses, $4,650 to $17,750. Travel and living expenses for initial training, $5,000 to $8,000. Opening inventory, supplies and small wares, $27,800 to $30,800. And additional funds for the first 3 months, $16,000 to $86,000. 2 of those 11 lines are fixed numbers. The other 9 are ranges, and the widest of them is $335,250 across, the gap between building this thing cheaply and building it expensively. Look at which 2 are the fixed ones. The franchise fee and the opening support fee do not move with your site, your market, your build cost, or your luck. $60,000, identical for everybody, whether the lot is cheap or expensive, whether the build comes in at the bottom of that range or the top, those 2 are the same, and they are due before anything gets built. There is one line of relief in the notes, and it is somebody else's money. You may receive an allowance from the landlord to finish the interior, or a rent credit covering part of the construction cost. The document tells you to factor that into your analysis. It does not tell you to count on it. And read the note on the last line, the working capital one. Additional funds are estimated to cover 3 months, and the document says plainly that new stores may generate negative cash flow. 3 months of cushion on a build that runs to 7 figures for a store the franchisor already expects may lose money at the start. All of that has to be in place before the window opens. Take the average kiosk, 1 year, 2024, and sort what leaves it by how it behaves. Some lines move with what you sell. Cost of goods and labor rise and fall with volume. Card processing does too, at 6% of the top line. Some move with sales but are set by somebody else. Royalty, $50,404. Marketing contributions, $16,801. Both calculated on net sales. Both leaving every period regardless of how the year went. A bad year lowers the dollars. It does not lower the rate. Some don't move at all. The technology fee, $4,200 flat, and $49,800 in other estimated costs. Business insurance, licenses, accounting fees, banking fees, store supplies, service contracts, repairs, maintenance, uniforms. The franchisor says that is an average, and it used the same $49,800 for every store in both formats, kiosk and end cap alike. Then there is rent, and rent is where the average stops being useful. The table says rental expense, $43,965, 4.8% of gross sales, a clean, quotable number. But the same document also gives the range of rent actually paid by kiosk franchisees during 2024, and that range runs from $5,700 to $134,107. Picture 2 stores. One pays less than $6,000 a year for its site. The other pays more than $134,000. Same brand, same menu, same royalty rate, the same $49,800 assumption for insurance and uniforms. The difference between them on that one line is $128,407. Hold that against the number this whole table is built to produce. The average store had $129,232 left at the end of the year. The spread on rent alone is $128,407, one parking lot instead of another, and the entire result of an average year is gone. The other format has the same problem in a narrower band. Rent paid by end-cap franchisees during 2024 ran from $12,000 to $93,772. And what the table calls rental expense is not only rent. The document defines it as the total paid to the landlord. Base rent plus common area maintenance plus real estate taxes plus insurance. 3 of those 4 are somebody else's costs, arriving at whatever size they arrive at. On a line, you are told to model at 8%. selling more doesn't move the last line the way you would expect. 3 reasons sit on the path. The first is subtraction that happens before revenue counts as revenue. $79,019 never arrives. 8. 6% of gross sales. The document defines that line as the face value of coupons, free or reduced drink promotions, gift card promotions, mobile app promotions, refunds, and free drinks for employees. Every one of those is a decision somebody made to move volume. The second is that the ticket went up while the growth went down. In 2020, the average customer at a Scooters kiosk spent $7.98. By 2024, it was $9.83, up about 23% in 4 years. The median ticket sits right on top of the average, $9.79 against $9.83 in 2024. So this is not a handful of enormous stores pulling the number up. It is the whole population. And the population was growing fast through that stretch. 140 kiosks reported a full year in 2020. 605 did in 2024. Now put the same store numbers beside that. Comparable kiosks grew 70% from 2019 into 2020, then 83%, then 92%, then 74% from 2022 into 2023, then 22% into 2024. Read the middle of that run carefully. In the flat year, the average kiosk sold $877,495 against $876,519 the year before. That is $976 of growth. On a store doing more than $800,000 a year, across 12 months, while the price of its own average order kept climbing. The third reason is the price of what goes in the cup, and it does not sit still. Across 2025, the December Arabica contract ran from a high of $3.99 2/3 a pound on the 29th of April, down to $2.72 on the 8th of July. By early September, it was back between $3.70 and $3.92. Certified stocks on the exchange fell to 686,863 bags. A 50% tariff landed on Brazilian imports, and Brazil's own crop agency cut its 2025 forecast to 55.2 million bags. The 2024 table does not cover that year, but it does tell you which line will take it. Cost of goods sold. In 2024, it was $283,990, 39% of gross sales. That is the line a bean market moves, not the royalty, which is a rate, not the rent, which is a lease. That one. Start with net sales, $840,066. 6% is $50,404. 2% is $16,801. Those are the exact two figures printed on the table. Together, $67,205. But the rate is charged on net sales, and net sales is only 4% of what came through the window, because discounts come off first. Measured against gross sales of $919,085, that same $67,205 works out at 7.31%, which means the discounting cuts both ways. 8% of everything through the window would have been $73,527. The franchisor charged $67,205. Handing out $79,019 in discounts saved you $6,322 in fees and cost you the other $72,697. Run the same check on the other format and it holds exactly. End cap stores reported net sales of $901,670 and a royalty line of $54,100. 6% to the dollar. Marketing, $18,033. 2% to the dollar. The rate is the rate. Only the base moves. Take it one step further. Add those two end cap lines together, $72,133, and set them against gross sales of $988,050. That is 7.30%. The kiosk came out at 7.31. 2 formats, 2 different buildings, 2 different rents, 2 different sales figures, and the share of the top line that leaves for the franchisor lands within 1/100th of a percentage point. Now run the ceiling instead of the rate. The agreement permits 15% of net sales in fees. On $840,066, 15% is $126,010. The average store's entire remainder for the year was $129,232. The headroom written into the contract and the result of an average year are within about $3,000, the same number. Nobody is charging the ceiling. It is simply there, in the document you signed above the number you take home. Now the door. The cheapest version of this kiosk costs $954,650 to open. Divide that by $129,232, what the average store had left at the end of 2024, and you get 4 years. Take the expensive end, $1,523,400, and it is 8 years. Run it on the median store instead of the average, on $119,993, and it stretches to 0 years at the low end and 7 at the high one. 7 to nearly 13 years of everything the store had left, just to get back to what it cost to open the doors. That assumes the average year repeats every year without a single bad one in the run. And the average year is the year where nothing went wrong. There is one collapse everybody points at. Starbucks closed its fiscal year on the 28th of September 2025. Revenue for the year rose 3% to $37.2 billion. In the fourth quarter, the North America segment, the United States and Canada, took in $6.9 billion, also up 3%, while its operating income fell from $1.3 billion to $308.5 million. Margin, 4.5%, down from 18.7%. In that quarter, 107 stores closed on a net basis. The chain finished at 40,990, and 627 stores went under the restructuring program. The other two segments moved differently. International operating income went from $282.9 million to $223.2 million, a margin of 10.8% against 14.9% a year earlier. And channel development, the side that sells packaged coffee through other people's businesses, grew revenue 17% to $542.6 million, held operating income almost flat at $265.2 million, and still ran a margin of 48.9%. Put those three side by side. 4.5% where they run the stores, 10.8% where they run stores abroad, 48.9% where somebody else runs the store and they sell into it. Then the part that gets quoted wrong. The company put numbers on why the full-year margin fell 710 basis points. Restructuring costs from closing coffee houses and simplifying the support organization, about 240. Deleverage, about 210. Labor hours invested under Back to Starbucks, about 130. Inflation, about 80. The bean market lives inside that last one, and that last one is the smallest of the four. The chain that closed 627 stores did not close them over the price of coffee. And notice what did not happen. Revenue did not fall. It rose 3% for the year, and 3% in the very quarter that contained the closures. The margin fell anyway. The stores closed anyway. Growth on the top line is not the thing that keeps a coffee business open. The mix is worth holding on to as well. In North America, the company had 18,311 stores at the end of the year, and 11,018 of them, 60%, it runs itself. That is the segment sitting at 4.5%. One more fact about that company. Of its 40,990 stores, 19,476 are licensed. On those, it collects a margin on the products and supplies it sells the operator, plus a royalty on their retail sales. Put the year on one page. Gross sales, $919.85. Discounts, $79,019 off the top. Net sales, $840,066. Cost of goods sold, $283,990, leaving gross profit of $556,076. Then labor, $237,778. Rent, $43,965. Royalty, $50,404. Marketing, $16,801. Card processing, $23,896. Technology fee, $4,200. Other estimated costs, $49,800. Total expenses, $426,844. What is left? $129,232. That is the average of 555 stores. Now the same 555, the same contract, the same 12 months, sorted by outcome. The median store finished at $119,993, below the average. The best one cleared $631,779. The worst one ended the year at -$296,663. And 265 of the 555, 48%, reached the average or beat it. The sales table runs the same shape. Across the 605 kiosks that reported a full year, average gross sales $914,719, median $880,794, lowest $240,038, highest $2,130,325. Now the second format, because the same document runs the same table for it. End cap stores, the ones in a strip mall rather than a parking lot. 47 of them reported a full year. Gross sales $988,050, discounts $86,380, net sales $901,670, cost of goods $296,633, 30% against the kiosk's 39. Labor $256,277 at 25.9%, which is the kiosk percentage to the 10th. Rent $56,127, royalty $54,100, total expenses $464,226, leftover $140,811, $11,500 more than the kiosk on $69,000 more in sales, and the same shape underneath. Median $133,594. Best $598,612. Worst minus $140,870. That sample was built the same way too. 55 end caps in the system. 51 opened the full year. 4 dropped for incomplete data, 47 left in the table. By the sales table, the 51 averaged $991,552, with a median of $998,022. The one place in this whole document where the median comes out above the average. Then watch the spread widen across 5 years. In 2020, the lowest kiosk in the table sold $161,902 for the year, and the highest sold $1,299,039. By 2024, the lowest sold $240,038, and the highest sold $2,130,325. The floor rose by about $80,000. The ceiling rose by more than $800,000. And the shape holds in every year the document reports. The share of kiosks reaching or beating their own year's average, 42% in 2020, 48% in 2021, 48% in 2022, 49% in 2023, 46% in 2024. 5 years, 5 tables, and not one of them where half the stores made the average. That is what an average of this kind is, not a typical store. A line that most stores sit under. And remember which stores are in the room at all. The 50 kiosks left out of this table are left out for one filed reason, and the document does not say which 50 they were or how their year went. Underneath every one of these outcomes sits the same $954,650 to $1,523,400 it took to open. The store that lost $296,663 was financed the same way as the store that made $631,779. An average is a point on that spread. It is not the middle of it. 2 names, 2 directions. Scooters by item 20 of its own document. 379 franchised outlets at the start of 2022. 525 by the end of it. 729 by the end of 2023. 825 by the end of 2024, plus 24 company-owned. 849 in all. The franchise side more than doubled in 3 years. Somebody is opening these. Starbucks closed fiscal 2025 with operating income at $2.9 billion, down from $5, $4 billion, and margin at 7.9%, down from 15.0%, and the debt from the opening. Why does the table end at $129,232? Because printing it was a choice. Under the FTC's franchise rule, a franchisor is permitted to give financial performance figures. It is not required to. A franchisor that gives none simply states that it makes none. and thousands of them do. This one gave 5 years of tables, down to the dollar, and then stopped one line above the number you actually want. The document even says so itself. These figures do not reflect all of the costs that must be deducted to reach net income. So the fullest set of numbers anyone will ever hand you about this business stops exactly where your own borrowing begins. It stops there lawfully, and it exists at all because the seller decided you should see it. The only book published is the seller's book.